Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Senior Bowl week. It is, of course, Senior Bowl week in Mobile, Alabama. The draft process is officially starting. We're going to talk about the top players to watch out for in the Senior Bowl. We're going to go over the top players from each position, and then we'll talk about a little bit of the underrated players who I'm actually interested in looking for this weekend in the Senior Bowl. I did go to practice a little bit earlier today just to check it out a little bit. Wasn't really that much to see. I can watch it on TV a lot and get some work done here, so that's probably what I'm going to do now and talk about practice basically just throughout the week. However, with that being said, you already know what to do. Leave a like, subscribe, comment, turn that bell on. We try to post on this channel every single day. Of course, it's Senior Bowl week, so of course we are going to be talking about the game a lot throughout the week. Tomorrow, Auburn basketball does play LSU. We'll give a little preview for that tomorrow. The Atlanta Hawks are playing tonight in the NBA. Duke almost losing to NC State last night. It was actually a crazy game, but the one thing that I took away from that match, or that game, excuse me, thinking about soccer right now, was that Duke gets a lot of foul calls. Duke is probably get the most generous team when it comes to penalty or fouls called in basketball. And yeah, that's basically what I took away from that game. Iowa State, the number 3 team in the country, has gotten upset last night by Arizona in the late game last night as well. And without further ado, we got to talk about the Senior Bowl, man. The Senior Bowl is really loaded with talent. We're going to talk about the best guys, so let's go ahead and do that right now on the channel. All right, so of course, here we are at the Senior Bowl list. We are going to save the quarterbacks for last, and we are going to be starting with the defensive backs. The first one that I had on there was Malachi Moore, but he has withdrawn his name from the Senior Bowl due to personal reasons, so we are not going to get into him today. Mac McWilliams, a very underrated defensive back out of UCF. I'm very excited to watch him. Dan Jackson, the defensive back out of Georgia, he has made a lot of good plays for the Georgia Bulldogs. Obviously, in the Sugar Bowl, we didn't really get to see that, but throughout the season, he has made some really good plays. Jacob Parrish, the defensive back out of Kansas State, is a good one as well. Roquan Lane, the defensive back out of Army, he has been a really solid player for Army. Army was really good defensively this past season. He was a big part of that, and I still expect him to be a pretty a sleeper pick in the NFL draft coming up after this weekend. Xavier Watts, the defensive back out of Notre Dame, he is a really, really solid player all around on the defensive side of the ball. So, obviously, there's that right there for Notre Dame. We did not see that in the national championship game. But in the Georgia game, Xavier Watts played a really, really solid game, and he is part of the reason why that they were able to go to the national championship game and make that national championship run. So Xavier Watts is very high on my board of defensive backs here at the Senior Bowl. Billy Bowman Jr., the defensive back out of Oklahoma, a lot of people have him going to Carolina. Me personally, I wouldn't mind it. He's one of the better players on Oklahoma's team. I'm expecting him to have a huge week when it comes to the Senior Bowl this week, a huge week of practice. I saw him a little bit today. He was making a lot of plays out there. I expect him to have a huge game day as well. And I expect him to be kind of one of the risers there on the NFL draft board there. So Billy Bowman is rounding out that defensive back list as well. Let us talk about the defensive line, because this defensive line group is star-studded. One player who I have on here who literally today just withdrew from the recent Senior Bowl was Shamar Turner, the defensive lineman out of Texas A&M. He will not be playing in the Senior Bowl due to personal reasons, along with Malachi Moore. So there's that right there. But Shamar Stewart, the defensive lineman, out of Texas A&M. Alfred Collins, the defensive line out of Texas. You got Omar Norman Lott, the defensive line out of Tennessee. TJ Sanders, defensive line out of South Carolina. Walter Nolan out of defensive line out of Ole Miss. A lot of people have him really high, which we'll talk about him in a second. Jared Ivey, the defensive line out of Ole Miss. Ty Hamilton, the defensive line out of Ohio State. Ty Robinson, the defensive line out of Nebraska. And Savion Jones, the defensive line out of LSU, are the players that I have for the defensive line group. A few that I want to highlight here: Jared Ivey, Walter Nolan, Savion Jones, of course, Shamar Stewart from A&M, and Omar Norman Lott. These guys are going to be beasts on the defensive line. They probably are going to start on Saturday, so we will get a big-time look at them come game day. TJ Sanders, another one who I think is going to be a very underrated, undervalued pick in the draft. I think he's going to be a steal, especially after this week. They have been talking about him nonstop on NFL Network, so I'm expecting a huge rise out of him. Walter Nolan, the defensive line out of Ole Miss. He had a really solid season for the Rebels and was a key part of that Ole Miss defense. And Jared Ivey as well. Those two, kind of like that duo, tag team duo there for the Ole Miss Rebels. And, yeah, that is pretty much the defensive line breakdown right there. Savion Jones, another one who I could see going in round 6 or round 5, making a huge impact right away if he puts in the work, all of that stuff as well. And, yeah, that rounds up the defensive line list for you guys there. Top offensive lineman. Now, this one is where I was kind of a little iffy on just because I don't know that much about the offensive lineman, but we're going to give it a shot here. Ozzie Trapello, the offensive line from Boston College. They've been talking about him a lot on NFL Network right now. Tate Rutledge, the offensive line out of Georgia. He was a key part in protecting A, Carson Beck, and B, Gunnar Stockton, especially in the SEC championship game. That game, I think, is kind of what got people on, got him on a lot of people's radar. Jared Wilson, another offensive line out of Georgia. Both of those guys, pretty solid players on the offensive line for the Georgia Bulldogs. J.C. Davis, the offensive line out of Illinois. Logan Brown, the offensive line out of Kansas. Garrett Dellinger, Miles Frazier, Emory Jones, all offensive linemen out of LSU. I just kind of had that group of 3 together because LSU's offensive lineman was pretty good throughout the year. It was really just about the quarterback play for the LSU Tigers. Willie Lampkin out of North Carolina. He's going to be a stud in the NFL. Whoever takes him is A, going to get a steal in the draft, and B, going to get a stud at the offensive line position. Seth McGlone, obviously, a lot of people know him from the Alabama-Michigan game last year, I believe, in the college football playoff, where he messed up that snap to Jalen Milroe. Jack Nelson, the offensive line for Wisconsin, he is a really solid player. He's on a lot of people's board to go in the 6th or 7th round, but could have a higher pick come draft week if he just performs really well in the Senior Bowl. So that rounds up that one. Let us talk about the offensive players right here. The top tight ends in the Senior Bowl. Harold Friend Jr., the tight end from Bowling Green. Jake Brenningstool, the tight end from Clemson. Mason Taylor, the tight end from LSU. And C.J. Dupree, the tight end from Alabama. All of those guys I could see having huge impacts wherever they go. Mason Taylor's built different. He is fast for his tight end position. C.J. Dupree, I've also heard, is really fast as well. Harold Friend, I think anybody who gets that dude is going to be a stud. And then Jake Brenningstool, he put up a lot of blocks. He's more of a blocking tight end for Cade Klubnik, but he did have a lot of blocks, and I do expect him to have a huge week at the Senior Bowl this week as well. Top wide receivers, this is where I want to talk about because I got some thoughts on the top wide receivers here at the Senior Bowl. Jameer Dyke, the wide receiver from Florida. Tez Johnson, which we'll talk about, the wide receiver from Oregon. Jamal Pritchett, wide receiver from South Alabama. I believe Kyron Lacy now is not going to play in the Senior Bowl due to all his off-the-field stuff, which we will not be getting into. And Savion Williams, the wide receiver out of TCU. All of those guys can see making a huge impact, especially Tez Johnson. Tez Johnson is rumored to become a Carolina Panther, which that would be an incredible steal from the Panthers if they could get him in the NFL draft. Jamal Pritchett, the wide receiver in South Alabama, he's going to be a good name to watch this week, as every single day he will be looking to get better and kind of rising to the occasion, I guess you would say. And, of course, Jameer Dyke, wide receiver from Florida, who's got really fast, really good potential as well. All of these guys, again, have really good potential to be some top risers in the NFL draft come draft week. Now, let us talk about the top running backs at the Senior Bowl here. Cam Skydaboo, Arizona State. We'll talk about him in a second. Jarquez Hunter, the running back out of Auburn. This running back group, is loaded with talent. Ollie Gordon, running back out of Oklahoma State. Damian Martinez, running back out of Michigan. Donovan Edwards, running back out of Michigan. Damian Martinez, the running back out of Miami, not Michigan, excuse me there. Trevor Etienne, obviously out of Georgia, and R.J. Harvey out of UCF to round out that group. Now, the two that I could see having the biggest risers this week are R.J. Harvey and Donovan Edwards for Michigan. Both of these guys are really good. Obviously, we know that Donovan Edwards has been on the cover of NCAA 25, so he's got that publicity added to his name, but he really didn't have that great of a season here with Michigan. Sure, he had some touchdowns here and there, but I'm expecting him to have a really good rise. I saw him earlier today. He was looking really, really solid in practice. R.J. Harvey is expected to have a big week. Then you have Cam Skattebo, Jarquez Hunter added on with this running back group. This is a pretty dang good, talented running back group here and at the Senior Bowl. So keep an eye on the running backs as we enter this week and go throughout the draft process. Now we get into the top quarterbacks and the final, I guess, spot you would say that we'll talk about the underrated players. Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss, Jalen Milroe out of Alabama, Will Howard out of Ohio State, and Riley Leonard out of Notre Dame. All of these guys are really solid players. Will Howard and Riley Leonard both played in the national championship game. Jackson Dart in Alabama almost made the playoffs. Jackson Dart, Ole Miss, Jalen Milroe, Alabama. Both of those squads almost made the playoffs this year. And I'm expecting Jackson Dart to be one of these risers that they keep talking about throughout the week. I think Riley Leonard's going to do just fine. I think Jalen Milroe is going to be just fine. But Jackson Dart has the highest ceiling this week, if you're asking me. I think Jackson Dart, with his ability to throw the ball downfield, his ability to run at times where you need him to, is going to make him a steal in the draft process, as Jackson Dart will probably be one of the highest, I guess you would say, risers out of the Senior Bowl week. Now, to close us off here, this video is kind of going a little bit overboard, but to close us off here, underrated players, we got Amir Thomas, I believe is how you say his name, the cornerback out of Florida State. Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback out of Oregon. Jared Ivey out of Ole Miss. Landon Jackson, the edge out of Arkansas, and Darius Alexander, the defensive tackle for Toledo. All guys who I could see making an instant impact here at the Senior Bowl. Landon Jackson, I saw him earlier. He is quick. He's quick on his feet for an edge rusher. Jared Ivey out of Ole Miss. He's also another really good key piece in that Ole Miss defense this past season. Dylan Gabriel can throw a good deep ball, and he's got a couple of his Oregon white buddies there with Tez Johnson and the Oregon tight end Ferguson as well. So there you go. Those are the underrated players to watch here at the Senior Bowl. But let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, turn that bell on, as we do our best to post on this channel every single day. With that being said, of course, let me know your thoughts on all of these guys in the comments down below. Who do you expect to have the biggest week here at the Senior Bowl? A lot of head coaches were already at practice. I saw a couple of them, Kevin Stefanski being one of them. I also saw Mike Vrabel as well for the Tennessee Titans, the newly Titans coach. So a lot of these guys are going to be at the Senior Bowl. There's going to be a lot of them in Mobile here for the week. Very interested to see who comes out to the game on Saturday, though. Let me know your thoughts about the video, again, in the comments down below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, turn that bell on, as we do our best to post on this channel every single day. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Peace.